Hello, Ron, and we are back. We are back, and we look phenomenal, as you can see.
Hell yeah.
Julio showed up on this call with a phenomenal-looking shirt, and I literally had to change because I was embarrassed of my crappy T-shirt that I was wearing to the taping of this podcast.
I mean, honestly, if all females saw me like you see me, my life would be so much easier.
You are the most beautiful human being on this podcast.
I'm not even sure if that's true. They definitely told her.
Come on, it is. All right. So after a brief hiatus over the summer, we continue now. And we continue with a topic that is very dear to me personally. I was kind of bullish about it when talking with Julia about it. And that is the rise of the silent seller, or as my good friend Alice Hobbs from Connected Sales says, the rise of the silent sales floor, right? So we will explore a little bit of what are the trends, what are we seeing, and maybe touch just a little bit of what is the future of top of the funnel, right? So, Julio, if you would please open it up.
Right, I'm gonna start controversial as usual.
Ooh.
And as you know, I've been doing a lot of cold calling recently, and I'll be honest, I do think that cold calling is on decline. Okay,
Right.
and what I mean by this is that I think 10 years ago, I could just get a list of unqualified leads, ring through them, and by sheer sales skills, I could just get stuff happening, right? And I actually noticed now doing the exact same thing, it is a lot harder, right? And so, go on.
Keyword being unqualified.
Yes, exactly. And so what this kind of tells me is that I think the stigma around cold calling is you get like a list, like yellow pages. For those that don't know what yellow pages are, is where you used to find all the business number, because people might not use them anymore these days. But like, and that's probably where the stigma cold calling is, right? Having a big list, calling people, not having a clue what's going on, and that can be quite annoying, to be honest. I could see why people don't want to do that. But on the flip side, and then where you're probably going to come in is like, talk me through what you do with your salespeople, right? When you get them ready for cold calling. So going to give us a bit of a balance.
So my philosophy, put it fast, I would, and not exaggerating, maybe 15 years. And I didn't know it was called like this. I only learned like a few years ago. It was called ABS, or account-based strategy, or account-based selling, right? So every single account that me or any of my sales guys go after is pre-qualified. So we think that there is a business case to be made. We don't know. We need engagement, and we need a bit discovery and all of those things. But we believe there is a business case there. And that is the preposition from which I begin, in my team or teams, begin cold calling.
Okay. Now, I'm going to make a wild example based on this, right?
Sure.
If I go to the average shy person in a bar and tell them, go talk to 10 people and trying to get their numbers, right? They're probably going to be like, oh my God, it's really awkward. I don't want to do it, etc. Now, if I go and tell them, look, go talk to 10 people, but these people are already like guys that have glasses like yourself, that are into manga, that speak French or whatever, then suddenly that person is going to be like, well, that doesn't sound that bad if I'm talking to someone that should be interested in talking to me, right? And I think that's where a huge psychology shift would happen when you do cold calling in the right way.
Yes. And that brings me, by the way, I agree with this, right? So what I'm seeing is less being shoved off SDRs' faces. And then a lot of these SDRs just don't want to do cold calling, and we get the rise of the silent sellers. Sellers that only use email, and sellers that only use LinkedIn.
Agreed. And I think
I would say to the very detriment of the profession they are working in.
I look, in this case, I think there's always a line somewhere, right? And if you got a guy that's really shy, but is really phenomenal at doing research and writing hyper personalized emails and messages and gets away with it, who cares, right? The problem that I see is that what this will lead to is that people will be phone averse even in situations that require the phone. So like someone replied to an email, I'm not interested. Like everyone that's done calling knows that if you ring and not interested within 2 minutes of them sending the email, 1 time out of 3 you'll turn them around.
Yeah,
right. And that's the prime time. So for example, and in that case, it's just simply bad to not pick up the phone.
Yeah. Well, look, the advancements in sales tech, I would argue, haven't helped the case for the rise of the silent seller, right? So first, you have a lot of email automation. I mean, it did start with simple things in marketing like MailChimp and Aweber and shit like that, right? Where you could automate your newsletters and stuff like that, right? But then it quickly turned into sales engagement platforms where most of the people just use email automation. They will automate 5 or 6 or I don't know how many emails in a sequence. And then they will run with it. I mean, you have platform, and these are platforms that are trying to make a living. They do provide a fairly good service, but like Reply.io or Woodpecker or stuff like that, like a bit more advanced platforms like SalesLoft and Outreach, they do have like dialers and like sentiment analysis, call recordings and stuff like that. So you're not kind of left alone, right? But these tech are kind of enabling it. And we can talk about how these emails are being written, right? And what are the reply rates and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is the technology is enabling.
Well, I think, look, there is a elephant in the room to address, right? Which is the fact that we evolved humanity to make our lives as comfortable as possible.
Yes.
There's very few things that are as uncomfortable as cold calling. It's just our brains are built against it. It's like being a firefighter, like, okay, that's it's not that hard. But
you just have to be crazy.
Exactly. But again, this is the thing. Like, I never met anyone that genuinely loved cold calling. They genuinely was happy to throw themselves.
I know a few guys.
I literally, I think even the one that told me, they were, yeah, I love it. Then when we have a few beers in the bar, they would be like, well, yeah, it's mostly bravado. They don't really seem to be so addicted to the rejections, right? That's at least the way around it. So I think I understand why we're moving in that direction, but it's probably gonna come back as a boomerang, right? Because it's not sustainable.
Yeah. So, well, we forgot a little bit about LinkedIn automation, right? So just take a look at your and mine inbox, and everyone trying to sell you everything without even pre-qualifying us. Like, hire my buyer for an enterprise grade ERP system. The latest email that I got today.
I had one yesterday, right? I posted, I have another podcast about HR tech. And this was about how recruiters get ghosted. And this lady, she clearly had an automation set because she was based in the US, and an email hit my inbox almost immediately. And then it's just basically like, and she commented on my post as well, the exact same thing. And I'm like, this has got nothing to do with recruitment. And yet you just automated your inbox. You just lost all credibility.
Oh, for
Right.
sure. For sure. I would rather appreciate dear and then in parentheses first name.
At least you know. At least you know.
At least I know you messed up and you
Mm.
try to put a freaking template in it, right? But it's so we have tech, right? Like we have automation, and then the scale, right? So with emails and LinkedIn, you can really scale. Like you can send a whole bunch of
True.
right? Unless you're using aforementioned connect and sell or any of the parallel assisted dialers, you kind of can't scale cold calling yet. We are yet to be in a position where AI makes cold calls.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think even I was having this conversation with Patrick Trumpi on LinkedIn recently. And I was like, even if the moment the AI can make a phone call, there'll probably be a regulation that forces them to declare it's a phone call. It's an AI. And then how many people will be willing to listen to the AI? Right. I don't know. This is just a point that I make. But what you said that's unfortunately scary is that cold calling is the most expensive outreach tool. There's no way around it. It simply is, because you need a person's time to call.
But it is the fastest.
Look,
if you have a really good curated list, and you are talking to your ICPs or 80% of your ICPs, come on, man.
Okay, true. But how difficult is to put that list together versus an email list? Like, and I'm not talking about gatekeepers, yeah? Because let's be honest, like getting through gatekeepers is going to get harder and harder and harder, right?
Well, if you suck at cold calling, it is.
It's generally that it's going to get to the point that you simply like gatekeepers are going to be more and more trained. Getting through to enterprise level buyers by calling reception, it can be daunting. I tried as well myself. And I don't find it particularly easy, other than the fact that your pickup rate is even lower then, because it's not even whether they actually have to pick up the line from the office, if they have a office line and all these type of things. But I generally would say it is more time consuming, it is more expensive, that there's no real way around it. But at the same time, I don't think it's the fastest, but it's the one that gives the best feedback. That's
true.
More that's what's really important, and the best quality meetings.
Yes,
those two things are important.
I would add. So, when you're only using silent methods, right? So emailing, LinkedIn, and whatever the social media you, Twitter, Threads, I don't know, X, I don't know what it's called now. It's just just ridiculous. So number one, you can hide behind the words, but your prospects can hide behind their words as well.
Of course.
With cold calling, if she picks up, then you actually have a conversation.
Of course. But look, also there's something else that I think Anthony mentioned on LinkedIn recently, that you're not going to learn sales by sending good emails.
No.
It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter how good your emails are, you won't learn the human interactions, while cold calling will. So if someone can cold call, there's usually a good chance they can run a good discovery call. There's usually a good I mean, at least they're in a better position, right? Or they'll be better writing emails, etc. They just will know how to interact with people better, which is why I think depriving the salespeople of the phone is a risky business.
I met a account executive, I'm not going to name names, but if he's watching this podcast, he's going to recognize himself. where in the company that has fairly high selling tickets, so between 50 and 200K, the account executives are forbidden from prospecting.
Wow.
Because, and I quote, our time is too valuable for us to be doing low-level work. So my question to you, my friend, is work of an SDR low-level junior work, having in mind where we are currently with economy, prices of sales stack, and how hard it is to open doors?
I think any statement like that is simply stupid and short-sighted. At least from the company side, I don't know if you should genuinely believe this or she's just parroting what the company says. But it's pretty obvious that SDRs are still the one that do the heavy lifting. At least, look, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of shitty SDRs out there. They can be ours, are just doing it to book meetings, and they got no interest in anything apart from the paycheck. And so, of course, like I also understand account executives having a different point of view. But I just remember whenever I used to have low problems in the sales team, all I would do is I would do a couple of days of hitting the phones with them. And suddenly most of the problems disappeared because if they see you doing it, they're just, oh, like, fuck, if he can do it, I can do it. And it just sets everyone into place, right?
Well, if you're a sales manager and you don't do cold calls, and even worse offense in my book is you don't accept cold calls.
Yeah.
My friend, you're a shitty manager. There is no way beating around the bush.
Look, I recently had this conversation with someone that commented on one of my posts, and I reached out to say, hey, like, are you one of the lucky guys that's getting enough cold calling from the team? And he's like, I've always done it, so my team does it. So I think if you're first line manager of people doing sales activities, if you're then not doing at least a part of your time that's yourself, then I mean, actually, I think there's any jobs. If you're a first level manager, you never get your hands dirty, and it doesn't have to be all the time. But if you never do, then there's a good chance that you're gonna suck at your job.
Yeah. Do you think AI will replace sellers, or at least will it replace SDRs?
Look, I think that's a difficult question to answer because the truth is that we don't know how much is going to scale and how quickly. One thing that I've seen actually a post recently from a guy called Michael Saruggia that I follow, and it's an Italian guy that talks a lot about RevOps. And one thing I do think is that we'll probably sectorialize the sales departments a bit more. So you probably have the guy, like two guys making calls, one person responsible for emailing and LinkedIn, right? And then everyone is playing up to their strengths instead of like making me, like, let's say, write messages on LinkedIn when I prefer to be on the phone. You can just divide it a bit more instead of trying to fit everyone into the same box. I don't know how you feel about that.
I did see maybe one or two companies doing this when I talked, and for me, so what I'm seeing is return to the full cycle salesperson.
Okay, interesting. How come you say that?
So we've gone through full cycle, and then Aaron Ross and Predictable Revenue did the SDRs / account executives, and service, right? So client success. And then we got obsessed with that. And now we are segmenting our SDRs to cold callers, social media sellers, emailers, right? So at one point, at least this is my opinion, this will all fail completely, and we will just be back to the full cycle AI that builds his own pipeline by doing cold calling, emailing, and LinkedIn. Nothing wrong with emailing and LinkedIn, but you got to do cold calling as well. Generate his own or her own pipeline and then close those deals. I mean, if you're in enterprise sales, you're doing that anyway. Like you got a multi-thread. So you got enterprise SDRs, which basically I have no idea what is their function. They will open meeting with one person in a 10,000 people company, and then you have to multi-thread and talk to literally 20 or 30 people more. Like you're doing that already. Only it's a little bit easier because you get to open, hey, Julie, I'm not trying to sell you anything. We are already talking with corporate. You got a minute or two just to talk.
That is a big difference, though, Mario. It's a huge difference.
Is there really?
That is look, in people's psychology, that's as big of a difference as you can get. And that's why account managers get paid shit usually compared to people that actually bring in business. Because it's so much easier to reach out, say, hey, I'm a friend of this guy. He said we should talk. Which might not be the case all the time in multi-threading, but it could be like, hey, we're already discussing this. I thought you should be including the conversation. Very different from, hey.
Well, why not? Well, let me interrupt you there for a sec, but this is kind of hitting a nerve. Then why not pick up the phone, call switchboard, talk to the switchboard, ask to connect you to the person. If they don't connect you to the specific person, ask their name. And the next time you call their mobile or send an email, you mention the person on switchboard. Say, hey, I just talked to Susan. She mentioned you and I should talk. So just tell me, what is the difference?
I think, well, first of all, it's a lie.
Well, I did talk to Susan.
Yeah,
she mentioned you are the person to talk to.
But it's a lie.
It's not a lie. Why would
straight up lie?
Hey, Susan, who would be in charge of your?
As if in an enterprise company they would know who Susan is.
Well, does it matter?
Yeah, but look, I like it. It's a bit on the gray side.
It's not a lie. It's
a little bit of a it's all right. Sorry, but I see what you're doing and I like it. I have, everyone uses their tricks, right? But what I think is more that people are still scared of the cold approach. Period. Yes, this is psychologically. This is just a fact. It's not something we can argue, and we can sit here and wish that everyone were a braver seller, or we can face their reality.
What about a myriad of sales gurus and sales trainers, and we did mention some of these on the podcast, who are selling their own shit, right? Selling, bulletproof email methodology, 3 email, 5 email template.
That's gonna be me soon, so don't slug it off too much.
All right. So what about that?
Just
so
kidding.
you have this army of sales coaches on the quotation marks. I don't consider them coaches. So quotation marks coaches that are selling anything other than pick up the damn phone. And then they make it look so easy because their content is fairly good. And then you as a youngling, a young seller, a Padawan, just learning the craft, think, oh shit, if this guy tells me it's easy, I'm just gonna do LinkedIn.
But Mario, look, first of all, like, as much as I like controversial statements, I'm sorry, but cold calling is not the only way to do business. That's bullshit. All right. It simply is. Now, we can talk about it as much as you want, but there's plenty of businesses to do very little cold calling and still are fairly successful. They should always have a cold calling part, but we can't talk about that being the main revenue driver of every business. And as much as I love cold calling, it's just not the way that it is. But
this is where we disagree.
We can disagree as much as you want, mate. But like, I'm pretty sure Salesforce, they do get a lot of referrals rather than just doing a bunch of cold calling.
Well, they've been on the market for 25 years. That's not an example.
Well, okay, but then your point is, so small and medium enterprises should be doing a lot more cold calling. True. I've seen plenty of them make channel sales work. Seen plenty of them make marketing work very well. They got excellent content. They get a lot of stuff from it.
Okay, so it does depend on the product. It does depend on the market. I would say, sure, fine. But what we do agree on is that well, let's see if we agree on. Cold calling is maybe not the most cost efficient, but certainly the fastest way to have a conversation with potentially your ICP, right?
Agreed.
Number two.
Actually, sorry, no. Number one is referrals always.
In volume?
By
volume?
Depends how good you are. Again, referrals. It depends how good your product is.
I've yet to see a good referral program that actually beats both inbound or outbound outreach. I'm
not saying the referral will beat outbound. I'm saying that it's a higher quality lead. Simple.
For sure.
Like it's not as scalable, but if I tell you, like, actually, I would say the referrals number one. Number two would be networking at events, because you meet them face to face. I think if you're good at it, that beats cold calling.
The network. I was evangelic about networking at events, but now I am like, networking at events is like Marlon Brando at his later years. You kind of get the mix, but you kind of get what you get, right? It's a mixed bag.
I think it depends on the quality of the seller, right? It's like cold calling. If you give the phone to someone that's not good at it, it's fine. But if you send a guy that sets up 9 meetings beforehand to meet up with people, then goes and knocks on people's door, I think still face-to-face is going to win. But I would say cold calling is the third one on the scale for me.
I mean, pressing the flesh always beats calling. But if we're just talking cold outreach, right? So, okay, we can agree that cold calling is very efficient, especially more efficient than emails and LinkedIn and stuff like that.
It's much harder to ignore, that's for sure.
Number two, I would say cold calling is much more resistant to AI automation.
100%, 1000%.
We with ChatGPT-4, and for everyone, just check out our last episode where we talked with Christian Redek on how to use ChatGPT. In sales, a lot of companies are offering how to build like email sequences by just uploading the lead list, and then you can automate that. So now executives, instead of hundreds of emails, they will receive thousands of emails. So that's what kind of be. And then LinkedIn is a very closed system, which is it will be probably, it already is automated with the templates and all of those things, right? So you can super quickly automate it, right? So I would say cold calling is resistant to AI automation. Is it in decline? I would say less and less people are doing it.
No, that's not what the statistics. I was looking at them earlier. Statistics said that the number of dials increased by 20% over the last few years.
Ooh, nice.
But also, interestingly, I don't know, I can't double check this, but
where are you getting your data?
Bard.
Julia is becoming
I am doing stuff. I'm looking
AI
at
expert. There we go.
So there's a lot of interesting things there. One of them is that the cold calling success rate in 2010 was 1%. Now it's 2%. So it's double over the last 13 years, right? Probably better tech, better things, etc., better ways to coach people as well. So I don't think it's a decline. What I'm trying to get at is that I think cold calling should be done by people that are good at it, you know, and they should practice this. And people that want to do it. Getting someone that doesn't want to do it, it's pointless. Yeah, that's the part.
Well, that's I would say in any job, especially in sales, you can sense when someone doesn't want to be here.
the thing is, if you give a really good ICP and a really good script to someone that doesn't want to do it, they might still book some meetings. You know, I might still make it happen, right? So
do you think that in the near future, so when I say near future, let's say 3 to 5 years, the SDR work will fall on senior people in the company rather than the young people, what it is today? So will SDR work, so basically openings, qualifying, and discovery, will that fall on most senior people, account executive work? Or it will continue to be the entry level position in sales?
Look, I would like to agree with you that we'll go back to full cycle. I've only ever done full cycle, and I prefer it. It makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
But
I love full cycle.
If I have to look at people's psychology, I think it's going to be very hard, because the account executives like the position they're in, making the best money by doing different types of things, etc. So, and the software industry is extremely spoiled. So I actually think that, and finally, let's be honest, young people that want to make it for sales will have the right drive to do prospecting, compared to, like, you know, if you walk into any sales team, the older people will be the least proactive. This is statistically speaking. I'm not saying, for example, you're probably going to be more proactive than most graduates, but statistically, that's going to be the case.
Yeah. My thoughts on this is, I think AI will automate a lot of things. I don't think it will replace call calling, but it will bring the rise of the maybe not maybe the discussion shouldn't be junior versus senior. It will be tech savvy versus non-tech savvy, or tech users versus tech enthusiasts. Sales guys who embrace tech will be just much more efficient than everyone else.
I mean, look, that's the given. But one more consideration about...
You mean this is Captain Obvious on my side?
In terms of the fact that, like, it's just the way in which the world is going. If you want to stick your head in the sand and ignore the tech is coming, I actually forced my grandmother. Well, my grandmother was more keen, but I forced my mother to use ChatGPT and Bard. And I was like, you're going to start using it because you're going to fall behind otherwise. But one thing that did spring to mind is that we were born with cold calling, right?
Yeah. I learned to sell over the phone when I was in my young 20s. Yeah.
No, but also when you got into a company, it was the norm, right? And then I remember when I left to the corporate, people were already a lot harder to get on the phone. I'm wondering, will Gen Z or you know, even the millennials are a bit more so will then the next generation just be even less prone to just answer cold calls? And then at that point you have a different situation, because it's not going to be about whether it's effective, because it won't be effective because people will be like, why the fuck you cold calling me?
That is very interesting, because the millennials and the Gen X, which I am Gen X, we are now in position of power. We are now in the executive positions, where we are the C-levels of companies, right? So to your point, I am still okay of getting a call. I'm yet to get one, but
I'll call you later.
There we go. Just I don't feel lonely. But to your point, the relationship, my kids are 14 and 10, have with their phone is completely different than relationship I had with the phone. Like, I have an expensive toy that I just use for calling and alarm clock. And I'm still fascinated that I can put in different ringtones on when I get an inbound call.
I think that's and this is perhaps where we need to be careful ourselves to not be stuck into the our generations know better type of situation. And one thing that I did notice is that last 2 weeks ago I posted about cold call openers, and my post went viral. And I had like 500,000 people view it. And what's interesting is that I had 3 inbound requests from that, 2 of which I already closed.
Okay, all right.
And that usually takes me 2 weeks of cold calling. So when you look at it that way, when obviously if the new Gen Z is going to be more prone in creating really good content and generating this more, let's say, cheaper version of accessing many people and creating brand awareness, then there's a good situation where there'll be maybe a combination of the two. And now what I do, when I post content, I look at the people interacting with my content, and then I'm going to call them. So I have warmer calls as well. So there are a few ways that this could evolve. There's not simply will cold calling die or not, but it's how it's going to evolve.
No, yeah, I agree 100%. In what direction it is evolving. I think that's the truth. Cool. Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, the further one would be I've recently been using obviously parallel dialers. I use a very simple one, not as good as Connect and Sell or Aurum, but if you can afford it, I think probably one of the worst parts of cold calling is also being bored, waiting for someone to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
If you can make your reps' life easier, also that's the time that builds the dread. Oh fuck, this guy. You know, if you are having a conversation after another, it's a very good chance that your reps are gonna be a lot more motivated. So that would be the final parting thought for the managers listening.
All right. For me, it's I will end this episode the way I wanted it to begin. And then we talked about the rise of the silent sales floor, the rise of the silent seller. I would add rise and inevitable fall. Because this is a kind of a pitch for cold calling, but it's more pitched towards omni-channel. Utilizing whatever you have in order to engage your prospect. And the goal is to have a conversation that you can convert into discoveries. However you do it, in the end, as our good friend Justin Michael says, in the end, if you schedule a meeting, you are right.
Well, whoa. One final thing with that. No. Because, and this is undeniable, you're never going to get the same quality meeting from cold emailing that you get from cold calling.
Yeah, true.
Simple.
All right. Everyone, thank you much for sticking so far. I hope this was a very good and enlightening episode and that you enjoyed it. We will see you next week where Giulio and I will look even better.
Is that even possible?
That is not possible.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.